And it is a really difficult one because where the consumer is now is very different to 3 years ago. There is an element that we do have to be more firm. We do have to revisit some of the closing questions. And we're getting a lot more objections, so we need to be able to handle them. And I think, again, it comes back to training, because what I see quite often is, oh, go away, have a think about it. And if really we've done our job, we should have answered every question. So thinking shouldn't be an option. It's just making sure you're asking questions like, have I answered everything for you today? Is there anything more that you'd like to know? I need to go home and think about it.
So, thanks for joining today.
No, it's my pleasure.
Where have you come in from today?
Well, I've come from Worcester. It's a bit of a long story, but not from home.
Yeah, I was a little bit impressed when I thought you had got this get-up done from a tent setting.
Yes, we're currently on holiday, camping with lots of ponies and children at the moment, but couldn't miss the opportunity to come and talk orthodontics with you, Tim.
Yay, exciting. So run me through Yvette's life in orthodontics, right? So I'm aware you've had 30 years, if not more. Let's not talk age. Shall we not talk age?
Let's not talk age.
So you have 30 years or plus experience in the orthodontic space. What would you say in your mind, based on having been in front desks, boardrooms, now on the consulting side, what is the biggest challenge that orthodontic practices are facing today?
I think it's really interesting, the sort of dental and orthodontic industry, because it's so fast paced and has been for so many years. That's what I've always loved and enjoyed about working in the industry, and why I've never left it, to be honest. There's always something new to do. But I think if we look at when TIO was put together 15 years ago, there wasn't any sort of aligner therapy at the time. There wasn't any scanners. There wasn't any sort of marketing, really. So for me, I think that really changed the landscape, because suddenly the opportunity to have straight teeth was for everybody. So it was that aspirational purchase, that decision that that person wanted to have that treatment done. And it's not to take away from the clinician's work. It just became something that people could have done rather than just referred. And it was mainly children based at the time. So I think for me, the main thing that's happened is that the way that orthodontics and dentistry is seen is different. It's more accessible. And also the way that we market the treatments, so that everybody can have them. So, and I think with that, I think the focus then becomes very much on generating more and more leads, more and more interest. And I think from my point of view, and working with TIO and working in the industry for such a long time, the main thing for me comes to be the follow-up, the training piece, and the team. Within the practices. Mm-hmm. That's always been a real passion of mine. That the teams are so important.
And do you think, because if you put yourself, I mean, you were a team member, right?
Yeah.
So exactly everything that you've said, that world has completely changed. You had new technology, you have aligner therapy, you have remote monitoring, you have now AI talking about taking up the admin side of things as well. Mm. Is the team structure the skills we look for? Because historically you kind of had your team and they came with you. It was a lifestyle, and you have people that were with you for 20 years, and that was a common practice in the industry. Yeah. That's no longer the case today. How do business owners and principal orthodontists combat that now?
Well, I think we're asking a lot more from our teams now.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I look back to some of the practices that I visited over time, you'd have that lady in the practice who'd been there from day dot, like you said, for 20 years. That job role never changed. Mm-hmm. It was the same job role. However, now, because the way that the landscape in orthodontics is so quick, we're asking people to upskill themselves, to take on new roles. But do we and have we actually trained them? Mm-hmm. I hear time and time again that practices are advertising for treatment coordinator. Mm-hmm. When the treatment coordinator comes, because at TIO we train them into a way that they've got such a high standard and that they are very integral to that team, maybe the team that they've come from, that isn't the same job description. So quite often people will hire and it won't be the skill set that they actually need. And I think that's a real issue in the industry at the moment, because there is such a difference with how we at TIO do things, and maybe how other practices would train a treatment coordinator.
Good. So staffing, right? Let's get real.
Yeah.
Staffing is a big issue.
Yeah.
And a big challenge.
Yeah.
What have been some of the good things that practices have done to retain, entice, grow talent? And then conversely, what are some of the shockers that you've seen? Because there will be some. The amount of practices that you've seen, not everybody gets it right. We don't always get it right. So I imagine there are some car crash moments that you would have some insights in.
I think the main thing for me, and especially after COVID, was that a lot of practices didn't restaff. So it ended up with people taking on multiple different roles within the practice. And that then causes huge amount of stress, because as everybody came out of lockdown, as everybody started to get busier and wanted more, unfortunately there wasn't that ability to hire the people in, because a lot of the staff had gone to work in other industries maybe, and so they just weren't able to get those staff in. And I think for me, I say the car crashes are watching sometimes good staff just not be able to cope, not be able to deliver what they were able to deliver. And it just becomes, you can feel it when you're in a practice sometimes, that there is an underlying current, or there's something happening in the practice. So I think probably, good staff are hard to come by, I know that. But I also think that there are some really good trainings out there now, and I think the good things that I've seen happen is that people who have taken on those roles have flourished, and you see people who are never thought they could do that job really become very competent, very good, and very integral to that practice, and I think they become very special within that practice, and quite often are the people that you don't think. I was in practice really recently, and I always thought this girl was going to be amazing, to be fair. And she's just taken a promotion, which is quite a big promotion. And I remember when she was coming into the treatment coordinator role, and I did some treatment coordinator observations with her. And it's so lovely to see that actually she is so good. So those are some really, really good moments. But yeah, the car crashes are usually when they're just given too much, and there's only so much people can do. And I think we're in an industry now where we want more and more. There's only so much people can deliver.
Yeah, agree. So let's take that a bit further then. So to link back to what you were saying, the requirements and demands on team members have grown.
Yeah.
What they used to do with one job, they're now wearing 6 hats.
Yeah.
We used to have one role that was dedicated to this. People have left. Times are tougher. Costs are going up, and therefore they're amalgamating these roles across the board, right? And the byproduct of that is not necessarily erosion of the patient experience yet, but you are having erosion of morale, erosion of staff retention, which will then ultimately impact the business in a longer term. Theory would state, right? So if you were today to have a practice that was in that situation, what would you do, and what would you recommend they do today?
I think for me, it's very much, we at TIO, we tend to go out to practices, and we'll spend, a day at a practice, and we're very lucky in the way that we're structured, that we can look at their whole pipeline of how they get the patients in. So we can look at from a digital getting the leads in, look at their marketing aspects. We can look at what their team are doing, and then we can look at what their start data is. So I would always suggest that we go in and we just, holistically look at the way that everything is functioning.
End to end.
The whole process, that whole patient journey, because we can normally see where that pinch point is. we also do things like secret shoppers. We can monitor when things are picked up from a practice, from their PRM, how they're delivering those patient expectations of when they're delivering those phone calls. And so we can see where the pinch points are. Mm-hmm. And I think for us then, we're able to put in a strategy of how we can overcome things. And if we can see that there's a problem on reception, let's face it, people buy from people. They're going to make a decision about your practice within a very few seconds. And if that is at reception and that isn't a very good opening, the likelihood is that patient will go somewhere else. But if we can pick that up, we can train that person, we can empower them to feel that they are that person that's going to make a difference between whether that patient books in or not. That's a really good feeling for that person, and it will empower them, and then they will grow in that role. And I think keeping staff is not just about bonuses, not just about pay, it's about empowering them and making them feel good. What's important to them, it's important that when they go home that they felt part of that team and that they've given something. There's nothing worse than going home and thinking, well, I'm just... How many times I heard it? I'm just a receptionist.
What I did today didn't add value, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Every person in practice should have a job role. And I think I've said it to you a couple of times. You have to have the right people in the right places. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of people. It means you have to find the place that they work better and that they flourish in. Mm-hmm. And then you'll have the morale, you'll have the team, the camaraderie. And find out what pushes their button.
It's that age-old metaphor of when the plant dies. Do you blame the plant, or do you look at the watering? Do you look at the light? Do you look at the nutrients of the soil?
Yeah.
Or was it the plant? Do you know? It's that...
It just wasn't the right environment.
But when it comes to people, we constantly put the emphasis on the person.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk a really interesting one where you're talking about the new patient call and the $5,000 pound phone call. There are practices that we are working with that are trialing different ways to this, right? So some have taken them off the front desk completely to free people up to be more present, to deliver a better patient experience and to wow those people the second they walk through the door and feel what it is like to be part of a premium practice and somewhere where the patient is right at the heart of everything that they do and every decision that they make. Others are taking slightly different approaches. So they are using TCs. So I think there's a practice that we know of that is swapping TCs. So they have 5 TCs. One TC takes the inbound inquiry phone line 1 day a week because the skill set, not just the skill set, but the time, the space, the thought process to be empathetic, to be human in the process, to meet those people that might be coming with, let's face it, some things that they have felt really nervous about or unhappy about or uncertain. And it's a very personal thing to be met with, I'm too quick, I'm too busy, sorry, the phone's ringing, I've got to get this person into surgery, we're behind here, we're a dental nurse down, and now I'm trying to coordinate the day operationally, are two very separate things, right? What would you say is the winning formula to making sure that phone call, is your vote keep it on the desk and upskill them and empower them, or is it actually remove it from the front desk completely?
It's a really interesting one because I was talking to an ex-colleague of mine recently and comes from a slightly different part of dentistry. And he was talking about the fact that two of the most successful practices that he knows have taken the reception away, and it's the phone lines are somewhere completely different. It's not always possible, and I think it's sometimes having to... It would be great as aspirational to say, well, yeah, let's do that. I mean, I know a practice not an orthodontic practice, but a practice that actually dug out the underneath of their basement. And they then put, a big sort of changing room, sort of nice sort of place for everyone to go. They put windows in, so it wasn't like they were going underground. And they put all of the phone lines down there. It really did increase their business. And it was very much concierge kind of, when patients came in, they were meted and greeted. And they were sat with, talked about any of their fears, etc., etc. And that works, and it works really well. So yes, if everybody could do that, that would be great, but not everybody can. So I do still think that having the right number of people on reception, being able to perhaps have that one person designated to take the calls, but the others to receive the patients coming in or coming out. Because at the end of the day, our expectations are so high these days. I know I do it when I go to places now. We're so busy, we're so limited on time. You expect people to come to you straight away. You expect people to know what you're there for. I don't necessarily expect a red carpet, but I do expect, like, I've got an appointment, that kind of thing.
And I think if you put that in the context of other settings of life, right? If I rocked up to a hotel, a 5-star hotel, and you ignored me for the first 2 minutes, and yes, I can see you're on the phone. Yes, I can see you're busy, but actually my expectation is to be greeted and to be made to feel special,
absolutely,
and to feel like the only person in the room. Do you know, like it's that age-old post-it note on the face that says, make me feel special. That's all people want. And people will pay a premium for that. I guess coming from like a hotel background, we were exactly the same. I love the point that you made around divvying up the responsibility. One is forward facing and one is admin facing. When we used to be in hotels, that was always the golden rule. One person had no administrative responsibilities. You were there to concierge, meet and greet, and direct people to where they needed to be. Right? And that was the first priority. Poor admin person was like trudging through mud to get it all done, but they were uninterrupted. They didn't deal with the phone. They didn't deal with those sorts of things. And that actually worked really well. Don't get me wrong. You didn't love being the admin person. You'd much rather be up smiling with everybody with no cares in the world, making people coffee, feeling great. And it was the nice part of the job. But you also were able to switch different parts of the brain, because that's what we're asking people to do in practice now. We're asking them to go from deep focus into a sales brain, into a scheduling operational brain, into a finance chasing arrears brain. And this unicorn that people are looking for is becoming rarer and rarer to find. And that is a real challenge that I think structurally orthodontic practices are, some are moving on that, and some are looking at alternatives, which leads me to the next question, which is around automation. Right? So my question for you, I guess, is, in these sorts of situations where practices don't have the means to have a call center behind and pay for an extra body to be out the front, wowing people, and in an ideal world, yes, but that is just not a feasible option for them. If they were to look down the automation route, how do they balance that? Because it's one thing to be efficient, but you want to be efficient not at the detriment of the patient experience and, most importantly, staffing that we're talking about, the morale of the staff feeling like they are an important, integral part of delivering that service and experience to the patient. Yeah.
And I think the thing is that, we do it a lot in our business. We're looking at personalities, aren't we? So, you have that admin person. I know of an extremely good admin person. Not really doesn't like people very much. So that person is right. It's all about having the right people in the right places. So that person is great. Having automatizations for that person and using AI and using these tools would be perfect in those kind of situations. That would be great, because you would really save so much time, and you can really start putting all these processes into place. A people person like me, not so keen on sat in doing the admin, loves being out front of house. It's exhausting because you always have to have that smile on. You always have to be courteous, even when people are coming in and maybe things haven't gone quite to plan. So you have to dig deep. But I do think that there are now real we're going into a new space, aren't we? We're going into a new area of orthodontics, where there are going to be so many tools at practices' fingertips. For me, it's making sure that everybody is comfortable with that, and they know we all learn at different speeds. We all adapt things differently. So there are things that I would really like to learn, and there are other things I'd really not like to learn. And it's finding out what the best thing is. And I think we try and shoehorn people into, well, you all have to know the same thing. But actually, do we? Because if we're looking at these jobs slightly differently, why don't we upskill where we need to upskill? Why don't we give these automations where we need to automate? And then organically the confidence comes and people will take on more roles. If you try to get everybody to do everything, I think that's where the problem is. And I think for me, dipping my toe into AI, a year ago was quite scary, because I almost felt it was going to take away who I was, but actually makes me sound a whole lot better, which is great.
Enhanced.
And actually, if some things could then be automated, hooray! Because I'm not keen on the admin part. So let's do all of that. So I do think there are so many ways that we can utilise. It always comes back to training and making sure people are happy, and you've got the right people doing the right thing. I think for me.
Agreed. So you're known for helping practices improve their conversion rate. Tough climate, hugely competitive for orthodontists, with GDPs now offering lower price points, needing to sell specialism over price. What would you say are some of the mistakes practices make when they are trying to close in a consult?
I think for me, and it is a really difficult one, because where the consumer is now is very different to 3 years ago. There is an element that we do have to be more firm. We do have to revisit some of the closing questions. So, and we're getting a lot more objections, so we need to be able to handle them. And I think, again, it comes back to training, because what I see quite often is, oh, go away, have a think about it. And if really we've done our job, we should have answered every question. So thinking shouldn't be an option. There should be a reason why that person doesn't want to go ahead. And so if somebody wants to go away and think about it, it's always very much asking a few more probing questions and this is where I think some of the treatment coordinators and staffing get a bit apprehensive, because they don't want to be hard selling, and you don't need to be. It's just making sure you're asking questions like, have I answered everything for you today? Is there anything more that you would like to know? I'd need to go home and think about it. It's just, that to me is almost, is there anything else you'd like to know? If it's, I would need to ask my husband, what do you think he's going to ask you? Have I done my job today? Have I answered all your questions for you? And I think by asking those, I think it will allow the patient to feel that you just want to make sure that you've given the best that you possibly can as well. I almost think that sometimes, the treatment coordinator and staff think that they're trying to be a bit heavy-handed, and they're not, because I can assure you in some of the other practices where they will go, it will be very much more, don't give them an option, just give them, it's so much per day as it would be a cup of coffee. They're really using those sales tactics, and use them if you like, but because where we advocate the treatment coordinator role, it should be that conversation. You should be building that rapport. And it goes back to the questions, when you need to have this done by, if you've got a family function happening, a wedding, is something happening, something special. And if you really get to know them, they should be able to say to you, why they're having it done. I think we're finding consumers as well, leaving things to the last minute. So sometimes it can be a bit of an off-put if an orthodontist is saying, well, this is going to take 18 months, where you're seeing another provider saying, I can do this in 9 months. But they're going to compromise that outcome if it's 9 months, because our orthodontists, we know, are perfectionists. So it's almost then being able to say to the patient, would you accept a compromise? Because we always strive for perfection, But if we know that they're going to go and compromise,
I love that.
so finding out why they need to have it done in that time span could actually be a reason why they're going to say, oh, they just said 18 months. Like, I'm getting married in 9. I need to go back to where I went.
And I think it's such a good point, because they're not an informed consumer at that point, right? They don't know the difference. We come from the industry and we understand it. We know this is the difference. We look at this is why that's done this way. People will say that, and the likelihood and the data shows that it's not being delivered. You look at direct to consumer challenges that have come up with all of that, and people that have had to go into 18-month orthodontic treatment afterwards to only, or done 5 years worth of treatment to be told that they have perio, and unfortunately their teeth are going to fall out. Like, there's some absolute horror stories with that as well. I think one of the questions I sat in on a consult that was really powerful, and it was used very strategically time and time again, was throughout the consult, if price wasn't an option or price wasn't on the table, would this be something you would be willing to move forward with?
Yeah.
Because what you're getting them to think about is, do I actually want this? Why do I want this? What is the driver behind it? And does this fit with me? Do I feel safe? Do I buy into this? And is it going to give me what I need? Regardless of price, because price comes later. And let's face it, price in the current world and is a measuring stick, it's a benchmark, but it is also a very real consideration in this elective market. Forget functional cases, but it is something that will weigh massively in the decision-making process. Is there any other, because a lot of the TCs are just expected to learn to sell, right? We go in and we teach, and obviously we do that as well, but they're not coming from 10 years of corporate sales training. They're not coming from going out onto all of these courses and understanding how to read buying behaviors, how to deal with objectives deeply, and how to maneuver people through the journey of decision making quickly in a consultative, supportive way. Based on your experience, because that is somewhere that you have had a lot of exposure and a lot of experience, and undoubtedly hours and days and months of training and training people to do it, what are some 3 questions, the 3 key questions you would make sure were answered or asked in every single consult, if you could wave a wand and be 100% certain that would happen?
I think I would always want to ask if they've had a consultation previously. Therefore, you can sort of uncover a little bit more. If you're building a relationship, it is quite easy to be able to, put those questions in. Have you had a consultation anywhere? Do you know much about orthodontic treatment? Have you had orthodontics before? That comes under the same banner, because that way, if they have had orthodontic treatment before, they've probably had fixed. They probably won't go down that route again. Might do. You also know it's a relapse, so it's possible. If they've been somewhere before, you can prime a little bit about costings, a little bit about where did you go, so you'll know whether you're up against another provider. Time, so is there an occasion that you need to have this done by? Is there any family functions that you need to get this done by, or is this just something that you've decided to have done today? Again, that will give the reasons that I said, because then you're able to, and if they do say, well, yes, I am getting married in 9 months' time, as an orthodontic practice, that you can stop the treatment. You can put the attachment back on if you're using an aligner. You can, take the brackets off if you need to, and you can replace if it's going to be something that they need to. But the patient won't know that. So they will just see the time as a barrier. And my third one would be, I don't know, that's a tricky one. I did have one, but it escaped my mind. So it would be, have they been somewhere before? What's the time span? Maybe where did you hear from us, about us? Because that would give the practice not only an understanding about their marketing activity, but if they were a referral, that allows us to do 2 things. Look at whether our marketing strategies are working, look at if our referral strategies are working, but also be mindful then that patient has probably already been spoken to about the treatment. So I would then, if somebody's been referred, be asking the patient, what did your dentist refer you for? What are your major concerns, and what did you discuss with them? And that way then you can find out, it's old age case, isn't it? I'm not really bothered about this one, but I'm bothered about that.
Yeah, I just need this one that just needs.
But we know that will be the problem.
Right, it's the least of your problems, friend.
Yeah. So I think those are probably the questions that I would ask. If I had time to think about it longer, I probably would have some more. But I think, where we are in the conversation, that would probably be, what I would ask.
Yeah. Another on the fly question for you.
Ugh.
I'm practice manager A.
Yes.
Our systems are great. We don't know why the doctor has decided that we need to work with TIO.
Yes.
This PRM system, not a fan.
Yeah.
Too much work. My spreadsheet's great. How do you combat that?
So I think the really nice thing about TIO is the fact that, like I said, I always look at it like a pipe, and we can see the leads going in, and we can see the patients paying their deposit and everything in between. So I would always say to the practice manager, how do you see the whole patient journey? And if that practice, I've got spreadsheets, I've got this. At what point do those patients get added into your spreadsheet? So it's understanding. So for us and for PRM and the soon-to-be bonded that's coming out, we say that every patient goes into PRM, because I was once told by a practitioner that just because a patient says that they're not going to go ahead with treatment, that doesn't mean today. That means just today. It doesn't mean that they won't go ahead tomorrow. And we're finding more and more now that patients are coming back. It used to be 6 months to a year. It's a year, 18 months, 2 years' time, because people want to save up. So is every patient going into the PRM? Because no patient should ever be lost. And once that patient goes in there, they should never come out unless they ask to be taken out or they start treatment, because you never know when that patient's going to go ahead. So for me, we come across barriers quite a lot where people aren't putting in anybody that's rung it through, because PRM is almost, it's almost got a reputation that it's only the leads that are coming through the website or a campaign, when actually it's a nurturing tool. It's for every patient that you come into contact with, whether they come in through the front door, on the phone, your website or a campaign. That way, you'll be able to see where your pinch points are. Have they gone ahead with treatment? Are they? Have they paid a deposit? What reason didn't they want to go ahead? Was it cost? Was it the wrong time? The other thing as well with the PRM is that you can consistently have it automated to be able to stay in contact with that patient. Can you really do that from a spreadsheet? And we see lots of new PRMs coming out, and that's great because they'll say that they show the nice shiny thing. This is the revenue that you could make, but that's not what PRM is about. PRM is about that patient being nurtured. There are other ways to be able to calculate your ROI, but the PRM isn't that place to do that, because that is being used by all the staff, and so the staff should be focused on nurturing that patient. And then there are other things that are going to be able to give us the ability to see how much the return investment is going to be, etc., etc. But I think for me, I would always say to the practice manager, can you see the whole patient journey? And let's talk about that. Where is your pinch point? Well, I'm not getting the starts. Well, let's go back.
Each block of the chain. Yeah. Let's talk technology. So you've seen a lot of fads come and a lot of fads go. Some stick, some not stick. How do you go about helping practices decipher what is noise? Sometimes can be very loud noise. And what is actually going to move the needle based on their pain point, the landscape and the challenges of today and tomorrow?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit vague here because I think it does depend on the practice. And I think you almost need to understand the practice to be able to understand what they actually need. And it's great for me seeing some of the practices taking up the video ads, that new technology. We know now that tells a story, so that's definitely where to be. Not every practice wants to take that up. Not every practice feels that they want to be in that space. when I was a dental nurse, which was a really long time ago, a new technology came out, and it was a laser in dentistry. And my dentist, he went out and he bought this laser, and we were in the newspaper and everything. I tried to find a cut-in, but I couldn't find it. I don't think they'll mind me saying, actually, it was a bit of a fad. It didn't quite work at that time. It was a bit too forward for the time, and it didn't really do very much. It ended up as a bit of we put it at the back of the room, and we used it to put our teas and coffees on. So that was a bit of a fad. But who would have known that having a little scan box put on your mobile phone would be so powerful? And it came at the right time, and that was, that to me was amazing, because these technologies, you have to try them. And I'm almost like, don't just try it once. And I know quite a few practices who've tried some of the products. They're like, well, I've tried it once, but they move on. The technology moves on. So that product that was launched 5 years ago is a completely different space now, and it can show you where there are pinch points in your practice. It can give you the insights that it needs. So I would always say that don't be afraid of technology, but just make sure that you get the support from the company that's providing the technology, or if you're integrating a new process, or you're taking on AI in whatever form it is, that you get the training to support it, because there's nothing worse than taking something on and thinking, oh, that didn't work, that was a waste of time.
We see that time and time again, don't we, where we go to conference. I've been guilty of this, I will admit.
Shiny thing?
The shiny thing, right? So I'm renowned for the shiny object guy in our organisation, right? So we play with everything. We have these great ideas, and in our mind, it's so simplistic, because we do this, everybody just needs to replicate that, and then, hey, presto, we've got the winning formula, right? So we're doing that. Meanwhile, the team, do you remember we used the bus analogy? The team have been flung around in the back of the bus, some falling off, trying to, the old question, are you on the bus? Everyone's like, we're trying. And, I'm like, ranking it around a corner. I think you have to slow down, right? That's the one thing that I've learned, and understand and really look at, why are we using that technology? Is it because it's cool? Play with it, totally. Don't try and remodel your business every 3 months around it. I think we do find practices are really inefficient now, because they have 27 different technologies, and the poor team are trying to just deliver consistency, continuity, a great patient experience. Meanwhile, the rug's been pulled out from underneath them. So there is iteration and there is innovation, and I think that it's really important for practices to constantly push that boundary. Hey, we're TIO, that's what we founded ourselves on, and what we pride ourselves on, the fact of always pushing that envelope and breaking new ground. But there is a balancing act between doing that and it actually sticking, being successful, and not destroying your team in the process, right? And everything that you've worked so hard to build.
Yeah, because ultimately, our orthodontists are orthodontists. They're providing 100% treatment.
We forget that sometimes, don't we?
Yeah. And sometimes the focus isn't on that. It's on the next shiny thing. And again, it could be that you have people in the practice which look at the technology, so that everybody's not getting excited or in some ways fearful, because then when that eats into the team, I know quite often when we go to practices and, you're coming aboard a TIO, there's a look of horror. We're going to change everything. We've just done all of this. We don't want to do this again. But we're there to enhance. We're not there to change. We're there to enhance. And I think Rome wasn't built in a day, that's for sure. And it is smaller steps and incremental steps.
Always said that about the TIO program. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And you have to do the foundational work before you can reap the long-term reward. And if you're not committed to that, it's not for you.
No.
And we don't want to be for everybody, because not everybody will stick it out, see it through and succeed. And I think that's a key differentiator, right? When you're looking at, there is progress, but there is sustainable growth, and there is sustainable progress in a practice. And that is what differentiates the successful and the ones who gave it a good shot and have an average business. Like, they're fine, but they're not getting there.
I mean, you have to look for new technologies, and that is a must because there's so much out there. But yeah, I think ultimately.
Fun questions
Okay.
now. What was the best advice you have ever been given in your career?
I think the best advice, or one of the things in my very, very first role, actually, was to never assume anything, to always ask the extra question. And I do always ask lots of questions, as you well know. And that's purely because if I don't understand something, I don't want to guess. And I think that that's what I think about with the practices. So one of the things that quite a lot of practices do is that they assume that the patient doesn't want to go ahead because of cost, or they assume that the numbers are down because of the competition, or they assume this, but they don't know. But there's data to show you if there's a problem with leads. There's data to show if there's a problem with starts. There's a data to show you if you ask a question, if the patient hasn't gone ahead, don't just assume that it's okay. That's fine, no problem. So, is there a reason why you don't want to go ahead with treatment today? Ask them the question, and it could be anything as simple as, well, when I made this appointment, I was definitely going to go ahead, but unfortunately my husband's just lost his job. Don't assume that you think that there's something, and I think that that's always had me in good stead. I do it in everything that I do. I always try and ask the questions just in case, and I think if the practices adopted that philosophy a little bit more, then I think they would have a much more sort of holistic view of how everything is.
Perfect. Good. Last bit, just intros and outros. So do you want to just tell me who you are, what your role is at the organisation, and talk me through the journey that you take them through and the steps that you would go through to identify and then solve that challenge?
Yeah, so I'm really lucky to have a team that does a lot of this, and I do it as well with them. But I have a digital strategist team, and I also have a consulting team, and I think that makes TIO very unique because we do cover the whole process. So my consultants would start with doing a secret shopper, and this would allow us to see that first interaction that a patient has with a practice on the phones, which is always really important. The second part is that if a patient has dropped into the PRM, is that they would then drop in a secret patient into PRM, and we would monitor the response, the time, and how the response takes place from that. So those are two areas of the real first touch point with the patient. That's the first part of the patient journey. My digital strategist then would look at the lead volumes, they'd look at what campaigns have run, what has been successful. Then we tend to do an audit. We do a PRM audit. So we'd look at, are things being followed up? What time it takes, are there patients left in there, why are those patients in there? So that will give us a really good understanding of the follow-up of those patients. So once they've been contacted, they're popped in the PRM, we see what the follow-up is like. We then go into practice, and we will also spend a day, we do patient and treatment coordinator consultations where we would go in and we would spend time in that journey. Sorry, I'll have to take this out a bit.
Yeah.
I forgot the word, sorry. So we would then go in and do a treatment coordinator observation. It sounds scarier than it is, but we basically sit with the treatment coordinator and the patient, and we basically would script out everything that's been said to see whether or not there is anything that we could help with. The digital strategists then look at the cost per leads, and they look at all of the volumes, etc. Armed with all of that knowledge, we would then present back our findings, so we'd be able to see that whole patient journey. So if a practice is stuck at all, or they feel that they're not getting the starts that they need, we would run that. That is one of the processes that we run, and it's very successful because it's end-to-end patient journey.
Great. Thank you.
That's all we've got time for today. Make sure you subscribe and stay ahead of the curve. We'll be dropping a new episode of Tim Talks every month. Thanks for listening.